Dumelang, Sanbonani, good day. After 30 years of democracy, recently there's been a shift in politics. We have independent candidates. Could this be a sign that the people have lost faith in political parties and have decided to take their work of saving their people into your own hands? Could this be that this will be another future where South Africans are part and parcel of their destiny? Welcome to the show. In studio, I have one woman who needs no introduction. Her name is Anele Mda. She has been a public speaker for so many years. She has shared stages with the who's and who's in the world, even traveled as far as the United States to go and chill with Michelle Obama. And today I have her in studio. She's running as an independent candidate. Most of you will remember her as the woman who was saying at the IEC, "Where is my photo?" My sister, welcome.
Thank you so much, Bafana, and thanks to the listeners of Cliff Central and Podcast Party, as it's now known. Thank you for inviting me, and it is my pleasure to be here.
No, thank you so much, my sister. I want to start from you. You grew up in the Eastern Cape, and has politics always been your thing? What drove you to politics? Why not music?
Well, firstly, I'm born from a family of great politicians, great leaders, academics. My grandfather was a politician, and he's a person who used to work very closely with the late ANC president, Oliver Tambo. And my exposure to so many great figures who were to become great leaders of the ANC came from way back in time when my grandfather was still alive.
Yes.
And, the funny thing about it is that as much as my grandfather died when I was still young, not that much young, I had not done anything at the time that looked like I was likely to go into politics. But I think at the core of it is the meticulous way in which my grandfather introduced me to politics, which was never, an aggressive way of putting me on the spot, but rather he was a gentle teacher whose way of introducing me to politics was really about elevating the values that he espoused as a leader. And those values, I think, they were to translate into who I was to become, because at the back of my upbringing, it would always be knowing that there is, I was associated with a person who believed in this or who did this, and whose stature and posture in his leadership style was about ensuring that one day I could emerge as a leader, and my leadership would be impactful in the sense that those principles and values that I learned that he imparted on me will show.
So, Anele, I know also at the age of 18, you started a new an organization, an NGO, empowering the girl child.
Yes.
At 18, Anele.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
At 18, I was actually in high school in Port St. John's. And at the time, in the Eastern Cape, Port St. John's as a coastal town was a leading province that was having high infections of HIV/AIDS. And here I was at school, going to school with classmates who were telling me horrible stories of how isolated certain members of their families are because of the stigma that was attached to being HIV positive at the time, and the lack of knowledge and lack of information. And I think the saddest thing about it was that the health practitioners and the health officials within the nearest hospital and clinic had no way of dealing with the issue, and they had no way of supporting the people that were affected, whether directly infected or indirectly affected as part of a supporting structure for that infected person. And I think the horror in me about the stories that I was hearing was, looking at an eventuality of families that would be destroyed simply because people lacked knowledge and people did not know how to deal with it. And
Yes.
I took it upon myself to empower myself with knowledge and information, go to trainings and whatnot, because I felt like this cannot be the ultimate catastrophic end of how families are going to be destroyed, simply because there's no information. And it was on that basis that I then established the Creative Young Women and Growing Girls Group, but ultimately leading to me opening the HIV/AIDS Information Center in Port St. John's. This was really to ensure that there's one-stop knowledge information sharing space, but also where we could offer pre- and post-counseling for people, but also ensure that we are able to conduct awareness campaigns in the communities, in town, in schools, in public, communities, where we are able to at least give advice on basic knowledge that people needed to know about HIV/AIDS at the time. Yeah.
I this is inspiring. A young girl passionate about his community, rising up and saying something needs to be done. It's an amazing work. Did you work with the clinics, the local clinics, or did you function from a center in the community? How did you do it?
Because I was staying in town, remember, I come from Bizana, and Port St. George is about, 3 hours away from Bizana? So I was literally a tenant. I was a lodger in Port St. John's. I was not even familiar with the place itself, because I was not from around.
Yes.
But that could not stop, that was not going to stop me from doing what I thought was necessary at the time. And it was not even about looking at the fact that the people that are affected here are neither my immediate close acquaintances or people that I'm familiar with. That was not about even a point. The most important thing was that by the time I leave Port St. John's and by the time I've exhausted doing this work, the way and the attitude, the outlook of the people towards HIV must have changed. The way in which people have accepted themselves with their status of being HIV positive must also have changed. But over and above that, we must take a step further to ensure that the government health practitioners also have adopted some form of empowerment that will enable, because a clinic in Port St. George, they used to chase a person. Once a person says, we suspect that they are positive, or once they tell them what are the symptoms, the clinic will be like, no, this person is HIV positive. Take her home with you. We can't even touch them. Imagine if a learned health official is going to have such brazen way of stigma. How much more to people who are not even knowledgeable? How much more to people who are not even learned? How much more to people who are not exposed to in any form of sophistication in terms of understanding modalities of treating people when they're affected by something? So that was not just an aggressive, offensive way of rejecting people. It was also taking it a step further to say, in fact, you deserve to be treated the way your family is treating you, especially to those people who are exposed to extreme stigmatization and the ill treatment. I was not only giving information and doing awareness campaigns, I was also going to families in households to do home-based care. And that was the most horrific way of being exposed to people that you are not related to in the most state of vulnerability that you would find them. But it was not even about all those things. At the core of it was the fact that no one has invited this virus in Port St. John's.
Yeah.
It has found itself here, and these people ought to be given another chance and another shot in life. And those of us who are at least still unaffected, we can use whatever means that are exposed to us at our disposal to ensure that we can offer support to these people. And I was running it as an unfunded entity. At some point, I was taking furniture from different stores in town because I had created good relations with almost all business people in town. So I would go to one supermarket, say, I need this bench. I'll go to a butcher and say, I need this table. I'll go to a bookshop and say, I need this shelf. I'll go to there. And I was lucky because I think the people... The business people that were in Port St. John's at the time, not one of them would resist when I asked for assistance.
I want to jump into politics now.
That's right.
You are this woman who's serving the community, probably what we'll call community activist.
That's right.
Why politics? When did you start politics? What drove you to politics?
You know, by the time I started an NGO, I was already in politics. I think I was active in politics at age 13. And it was through a very funny way, because I remember back in the days, we used to see those ANC guerrillas who would be wearing camouflage, and every morning on Saturdays, around Boma 4 or 5, you would see them drilling and
slogans.
Yes, and I mean, you wouldn't be a person who lived that time if you didn't wake up, because it was so irresistible. And there was something that always said, why can't I do those things as well, you know? But I think later on, with maturity now, understanding that these people, this thing that they were doing looked as though it was nice. When you got into understanding the political background of the horrific state that we are in, but see the commitment of those people in such high spirits, because they've got hope that the leaders that are not with us now, they are in exile, but the promised land that they are there to fight for, we can only imagine it and keep that imagination alive by the way in which we propel our spirits of agitation, and begin to build this imaginary possibility of this future that they are coming to fetch for us.
True.
And the way of keeping this dream alive is that we must connect with them in spirits that says we mobilize ourselves and keep ourselves alert, ready, because they might come back with a report that says we are indeed coming back now, because indeed the struggle is over. The attainment of the people's cause has been achieved.
Yes.
So that for me stuck with me, and it made me to always link that with the state that I used to see my grandfather going through. And I think from a very early age, when I used to see Boers coming to my house, raiding the house, and the way they would ill-treat my grandfather. I remember at a very young age, I used to say, when I grow up, I will revenge for my grandfather. And it was not revenge in the sense that I will fight every white man I come across, or every white woman I come across.
Fight the system.
But it was more to say, I know this system belongs somewhere. And at the core of the system, at the roots of the system, is the enemy is my people. I am on the side of the people that are seen as an enemy. Yet I am the victim of the system.
True.
So I will rise however way. I will force a way. If roads are closed, I will force that I must find my way so that I can go and fight the system. So that was my commitment, because the face of the victims at that time was my grandfather. And I was powerless at that point. I couldn't do anything to protect him, to stand and fight with him, and fight for him.
Yes.
So I could extend my grandfather's suffering to the greater nation of Black people to say, this is what Black people are likely going through.
Yes.
And they are going through this at the hands of these people. So the system is against a Black person.
True.
So I would be rising, as much as in my head as a child at the time, is revenge for my grandfather. But at an elderly time, I mean, at a more advanced adulthood, there has now been a contextual grasp and understanding and comprehension of the fact that, oh, there's a system that has waged war against my people. Hence, my grandfather was subjected to 1, 2, and 3. And that was to lead me into politics.
So those who know you will remember you during the times of COPE.
That's right.
Give us why not ANC at the time, as your father was part of the ANC? Or were you part of the ones who were in the ANC and left with Tatele Kota? Give us more context.
Yes. I was born in the ANC. It was by no default that I grew up and became a political, young bright mind in ANC politics, because that's where I grew up. That's where I was born politically, right?
Yes.
And I was in the ANC, like I said, since I was 13 until 2008, when we decided to leave the ANC and form COPE. I was one of the people who were founding leaders of COPE. And I think the extension of us leaving the ANC and establishing COPE It was exactly to avoid some of the things that have come to be realized as we had warned about them as far back as 2002.
Give me three.
All right. One of the things that we had spoken about, you will remember that building up to the decision of the NEC that recalled former President Jacob Zuma at the time as a deputy president of the country.
Yes.
At the core of it was the procurement that related to the arms deal.
Yes.
Which did not involve him alone. It involved so many politicians. Bomambale Gambete were involved as well on the bribes. Botoni Yengeni, many people of the ANC, right? But here is the thing. When this whole thing started in 1997, and it gets to be exposed to the leadership around 1999 and 2000. And ultimately, when President Mbeki is out of the country, he comes back and informs the officials of the ANC that, I've gotten some information, and it's very disturbing, and it affects a very senior leader of our country and of our movement.
Yes.
Obviously, ultimately, this information has to be divulged to the officials, Simang and them. And it transpires that there is information that is very detrimental and contaminating on the character of the deputy president.
Yes.
Now, fast forward, because you said I must give you three. Fast forward, you have ultimately the ANC that takes the decision that we're going to recall the deputy president because he is not fitting the cut of the through the eye of the needle that the ANC uses in identifying leaders that must represent the ANC in public office.
Yes.
It recalls him, right? What happens after that? He gets recalled, but the PR changes and says Thabo Mbeki has removed Zuma. But there's not Thabo Mbeki that has removed Zuma. The ANC has recalled its deployee, right?
Yes.
That's the first thing. And there is this PR that is deliberately used to put the name of the president at the time. Mind you, this is the president of the organization. All of us as members of the organization are compelled, duty bound by constitution of the ANC, to stand in protection of the president, whoever that president is at the time.
Yes.
But we are seeing something very foreign and un-ANC of the fact that in this instance, we have to isolate the president, put him outside and embrace the person whom the organization has pronounced and taken a decision against. Secondly, we go obviously to Polokwane. Polokwane, ultimately, Polokwane decides against us. We do not win the Congress of Polokwane, which is okay. And that was not the first Congress we lost.
Yes.
There are many Congresses that we've lost in the ANC and we remained in the ANC. So there was nothing new about us losing a Congress and us having to decide what to do. There was no reason for us to get on what to do. What was the breaking point for me that shook my political principles that believed in the ANC was the fact that in the ANC you can wake up one day coming from the hardcore revolutionary molding that I emerged from as an ANC person, coming from that space, wake up one day, see a deployee of the ANC being removed without any formidable logical rational basis, and there's not even consultation for the people of South Africa who made this person to be the president, and that is seen okay. That was the second thing. The third and the last one was when we were willing to sacrifice the organization simply because we wanted to elevate one person above the organization. You know, I always say, I don't understand what is it that now Abombalula are complaining about Zuma. Because when we spoke about the shenanigans of Zuma as far back as 2002, we were the ones who were labeled that no, we are tribalists who do not want anyone who must come and succeed a Xhosa person. We want to deepen a Xhosa Nostra in the ANC, right? And when you look fast forward from there up to now, today they are unable to even apply the constitution on that man because they created a demagogue who is untouchable. A demagogue that they were willing to throw every single prescript of the ANC rule book. Because when it is Zuma, the rules do not apply. But they will apply when it's other people. And those things for me were at the core of the principles that made me believe in the ANC in the first place. And I was not about to stay simply because I was fearful of what the next person is going to say or think of me. Because I've never been in politics to fulfill another person's assumption of what they perceive me about.
You know, I like the fact that you stood for what is right And even in the course where most of you were labeled sellouts, most of you were labeled tribalist, you knew that the party was going through a downward spiral, and you couldn't just. I mean, now it's only now that they're saying, we should have fixed these things there. I mean, now they're actually even bad mouthing Zuma, the same Zuma that they were defending. It's a mess right now. But I'm gonna come to you. Now you come and you say, I'm going to stand up as an independent candidate.
That's right.
Most people would say, why not join a political party?
I think one thing about me is that at every at every turn of anything that I do, I never miss the moment to pause, reflect, and watch.
Yes.
And that is important because it informs my next course of action. And that next course of action must be a well thought process, must go through a very well thought process. I mustn't be rushed by maybe the against that I'm looking at. There are, certain, deliverables that I'm likely to benefit from. I'm less about anything that is rosy and exciting. I'm about the key substance issues, which you only find when you dig in the mud and dirty your hands, So looking at the political landscape of South Africa, and both considering the new and old political parties, as well as the people that have just established parties now, very recently, it became very clear in my mind that political parties are all the same. They represent one and the same mission, which is that of presenting themselves as a most ideal ones to be to have their hands in the cookie jar. And when the hand is in the cookie jar, it's not in the cookie jar so that they can share with you and me and the next person. It's in the cookie jar so they can fulfill their interests and needs, right? And you can neither tell me about a liberal party or a social leftist party. All of them, if it's a political party, the only basis of their existence is to fulfill their own needs and desires. And at the core of those needs and desires, there is no citizen. It's their members. And we cannot be a country that is held at ransom by having to bankroll the lifestyle of members of political parties at the expense of the lives of South Africans that are left in such a wallowing and shameful state. So no political party resonated with any of the things that I currently believe in. And after I had considered every single thing that exists, I looked at the state of our citizens. I looked at the state of my people. And I was like, I at this moment, I've got no intention to betray such a genuine cause that is calling, simply because I may be having dangled carrots of positioning. I mean, I have been approached by so many political parties. Some were prepared to unveil me as premier candidate. Some were prepared to give me deputy president in their organizations and this, that, and the other. But because I have never been a position monger, I've never been a person whose movement in politics is about ensuring that I cling somewhere. I mean, I've been out of politics for a good 12 years. But my coming back has got nothing to do with me having to try and reintroduce myself because I need relevance. I need no relevance. I'm a global speaker. I'm a global leader. My work in South Africa speaks for itself. I no longer need to convince anyone about what I'm prepared, what I'm capable of doing, because I've been a leader all my life. I've never stopped being a leader. Hence, I felt I do not need a political outfit that I must use to, formidably affirm myself or elevate myself. The only elevators for me who are needed and who matter are the grassroots ordinary people of South Africa who are of no status, because those are the people I am prepared to serve. I've always served. And no political party could take that away from me, and no political party could replace that, because they had nothing to offer me that was better.
There was a view that most political parties, some of these new ones, is people looking for jobs and not necessarily having the interests of the masses at heart. We have over 300 political parties, and you ask yourself, why can't just unite and constantly have a common interest for the country? But that's something for another day.
That's right.
I'm coming to you on this part of you're an independent candidate. South Africans are used to this system of voting for parties. So they know if they vote for this party will appoint certain people. So when I vote for you, let's say to be a premier or to be a president of this nation, will you be working with other political parties in a coalition format? Or would you be handpicking South Africans from different sectors to work with you?
As the president, remember, you are entitled by the Constitution that you can appoint up to 2 people to serve in the cabinet who are not members of parliament. But that means you are confined to appoint your cabinet strictly from people who are already members of parliament.
Okay.
So it goes without saying that one way or the other, you will need to identify across the spectrum. But here is the trick. For me, the issue is not about inability or ability to work with political parties. The issue is having the necessary temerity and understanding what is it that you want to achieve. Because as much as how rotten political parties are, I cannot sit here and lie and say to you, every single member of a political party is rotten.
True.
Every single member of a political party is corrupt. That's not
Yes.
true. The most important thing that we require as South Africa is having a leader who has the boldness not to fall trap into the fame card that is always being pursued. Look, a person who's prepared to dig deep, look for people who has got a heart for this country. People who are committed to serving this country regardless of from which angle do they stand. People who are willing to raise their hand when they are being called upon and say, if it's about the South Africans, I do not care who's calling me. I will rise up and respond to the call to task because I committed to serve the people of South Africa. So some politicians who have formed political parties simply because they've realized that, you know what, there's no life out there. They can no longer recognize themselves because they've become synonymous with the challenges that the communities are facing. And they are looking to be above people and different. All I can say there is that it's high time that South Africans need to wear their vigilance at all material times. Because South Africans must continuously put us on scrutiny. Once you say you are for the people, they must dig and look, what is it that you have done that can affirm what you are saying? Because you can't be for the people and there is no footprint that shows that you have always been for the people. Your work must speak for yourself. You mustn't convince anyone about anything. Focus on the cause that you are pursuing, but your work must speak for itself. No one must come to you and be like, so what do you stand for? No. Your work must be there. And your footprint must be so bold that no one can act as though they can't see it.
So I'm going to go to these issues, right, where you have unemployment rate in this country. You have a lot of young people falling into a trap of drugs because of mental health issues.
Yeah.
And I think it all connects to the issues that we have. If you are unemployed, you are most definitely going to be depressed, and your depression will lead you to drugs. Your drugs will lead to suicide or go to rehabs and all of that. As a young person, I don't like this thing of a young woman. As a young person who is passionate about our people, what can you promise them? What change will come under your leadership?
Firstly, I do want to say, Bafana, that the state that you find young people of South Africa in currently is a very strategically well-sponsored crisis from within. It is more like an intentional plan by a parent to subject a child into a circle of leading them to a slow death, right? Because you do not want to assume responsibility and leadership over that child.
Yes.
You believe that assuming leadership and responsibility over the child is going to be so intensively involved of you. It's going to be so demanding. You are not willing to take time off and do that.
Yes.
So you rather subject this child into a slow sponsored death that before they reach their death, they've long died. They would have long died. That's exactly the state that young people of South Africa are being subjected to. If you are looking at every single turn, there's no industry that is friendly to the current crisis of unemployment that is facing young people.
Yes.
There is no one who's willing to take a chance on young people. A young person can walk in here if let's say we're a government setup. A young person can walk in here with an innovative idea, a killer idea. It starts with the questions that a young person will be asked. They will be so demoralizing that they need to let go of this idea. It's not going to take them anywhere.
It's just a dream.
Yes. And over and above that, by the time the young person leaves there is, remember, to have an innovative idea is not the actual it. He has or she has even an imaginary success story of this idea.
Envisioned the whole
thing. Yes, it leaves, right? He has reached or she has reached the destiny of this idea, which you cannot see. But you're not going to say, you know what? Let's just take a risk. And these are the very same people that so many people took risk on them to be where they are. And they're not prepared to take a risk on young people of South Africa.
Yes.
Here is my formidable, solid proposals that I put in my manifesto. For instance, on mental health on young people. We need a society where there is, communal support structures of debriefing.
Yes.
And when I'm saying debriefing, social debriefing, that unburdening.
Yes.
Right? And unburdening can be in however way. It could be through prayer sessions in communities. It could be through meditation sessions. It could be through counseling. It could be through going to an open space where you are able to dial and talk as a coughing out mechanism to unburden yourself, to distress. It could be through a virtual, distant telecounseling or telepsychiatric conversation that is able to emotionally penetrate the state of fatigue that has reached, that you are either suicidal or you are spinning around thoughts that are not progressive but that are rather regressive, and that seeks to pull down into a dark hole that takes away the joy of life from you. Those things are not nice to have in this current juncture.
True.
More especially when you're looking at the backdrop of the fatigue that was caused by COVID to people. The state of the psychological confinement. I mean, you had people that have not seen their family members because they lived in jail cells. The COVID took them back to that dark hole, right? So we're no longer speaking about creating these communal support structures of psychological support just for the fun of it. The mental depression that people are dealing with because of the state of our country and the state of the regressive nature of our development in South Africa is the reality that has reached people's levels of endurability to be exhausted, right? And on top of that, we need not to counter, or we need not to discounter the fact that as much as young people may not be people that are able to cough out and speak, if mechanisms of support can be availed, we might just be able to have that mental shift that we require. But also, there is a need for us to engage on social cohesion dialogues. Those social cohesion dialogues are dialogues that are about, re-infiltrating young people with positive messaging about their country. Remember,
patriotism.
But yes, when you say it's the 21st of March in South Africa, it's called Human Rights Day. But in essence, that's a Sharpeville massacre day. What is our political resocialization of young people of this current juncture to understand the historical political events that shaped the space that we find ourselves in now, which they may not necessarily be living under at this point in time. But those historical events, they are very pertinent and relevant to their existence. And failure to give them that a kind of knowledge, you are denying them the very value that they ought to hold the patriotism yabo in this country with. Because when they understand 21st of March as a holiday, there is a package of information that you have not given them. You have given them a shell. They simply know that, oh, today we're not going to work, we're not going to school, we just chill, we braai, we drink. But you are supposed to engage
and conscientize
on a political reconscientization and resocialization of young people to say, whilst that era is no more, the incidents and the events of that era, they are relevant today because we are a country in motion. The Democratic Evolution Project is in motion. It has not yet reached even a half of its trajectory benefit to the people, right?
So, my sister, I love your energy. You know, you speak with so much, and I look at the youth today in schools where they are passing with 30%. In varsities, there is no NSFAS. Our education system is in shambles. Your view?
Firstly, I hold a view that says education is just but one tool at the hands of the people of a country to navigate solutions to the challenges of that community. What am I saying? I'm saying we ought to traverse on an academic journey that seeks to empower the people of South Africa through centers of academic excellence, that is the schools. Empower them with skills that will render them to be people who will devise solutions that academically they can provide solutions to the challenges that we currently live in, right? So education is not a passive additional necessity to a person.
Yes.
It is a developmental resource tool that you empower a nation with.
Yes.
To say we need academically to prepare a cohort of people that will be able to bring academically, scientifically proven solutions that will meet and match the challenges that we experience. And when you do that, you need to be of conscious, sacrosanct ability of imagining what is the area or the era that you are in, and what are the challenges that are dominant and glaring. As a result, what kind of solutions? But when you are going to have an education system that is going to take, firstly, curriculums that have been abolished in other countries, you transfer it to South Africa. You take it to South Africa to be a curriculum and a syllabus that is not used anywhere. I mean, we had OBE for a very long time in this country under Kader Asmal, which was a useless thing. I mean, tell me, why would you be in South Africa? You do not have agricultural science as a subject at primary up to high school, and you are able to produce agricultural scientists at varsity. How can you link a person who has not done agriculture at junior level, at primary level, and secondary level, and they've got a vision of becoming agricultural scientists? But when they reach varsity, there is a whole lot of 12 years that they leave behind. Of work, of time that has lapsed, that has not been used formidably in line with with the line of career that they want to venture into, which is so beneficial when you are looking at the broader spectrum of the challenges of South Africa.
My sister, and you are right. Our education, I think what you are saying is that we need to reform the education sector.
Absolutely.
We need to streamline it in a way that from grassroots level, the full development of a child until varsity, it has to have a purpose, it has to have direction, it has to speak to the needs of the country. It can't just be done passively just to finish school. I'm going to come to this issue. There has been social grants.
Yeah.
There has been 350s.
Yeah.
There's been all of this relief that has been given to the poor masses of this country.
Yes.
do you think that this is being done deliberately to keep people dependent on the state? Or do you think they're just maybe honest interventions of government? Because as of late, you have heard that if you don't vote, you won't get your 350.
Firstly, Bafana, let me say that starting from the social grants are a need in South Africa.
True.
Right? And I'm saying they are a need because of the social inequalities in our country that you can't counter.
Yes.
Right? But here is what I will tell you. The social grants in 2022, about 7 million South Africans were sponsors to 23 million social grants recipients. That on its own must first tell you that this is not an honest relief. Because if it is an honest relief, social grants will be received by deserving, due, and needy people. You will have a mechanism of ensuring that the recipient is indeed a deserving beneficiary. But you know what happens currently? Ghost beneficiaries who come through politicians receive social grants. Some politicians themselves receive social grants in pseudonames, right? But what that does, it takes from a deserving, needy, destitute and desperate South African who has got no form of earning,
Yes.
who remain unapproved in the system as a beneficiary because that benefit has been taken over by a greedy politician. That beneficiary has been taken over by an illegal immigrant who has bribed an official from SASSA to ensure that they are on the system. Secondly, the 350, there's nothing honest about it. I'm one of the people who welcomed the intervention of the 350 when it was announced in 2020. And let me tell you the basis of me welcoming it.
Yes.
It was on the basis of the lockdowns that have subjected people to be house arrested.
Yes. Yes.
There was no way of people going out to look for ways of self-sufficiency, right? So government needed to intervene in that because the government had caused that destabilization.
Yes.
So the 350 was not an issue for me at that time because I was seeing it as a gap intervention.
True.
But let me tell you what has since 350 become. The 350 has since become a marinating way of our government
To secure votes.
running away from facing the reality of how they have subjected young people into becoming ghosts that are languishing the streets of South Africa. Tell me, what embarrassment is it to give a graduate 350?
Man.
What are you doing? What is a psychological damage that you are causing to a young person who is awaited by a parent who sacrificed by the street selling fruit just so they can have a graduate in the house who will come back and assume
Uplift.
responsibility and change the economic landscape of this family for the better. That parent even goes as far as reaching his or her deathbed without having been able to see her or his child being employed just for one, right? And now we sit and use that 350 as a micromanaging aspect of wanting to get votes to people.
It's sad.
That's the level of desperation that you are willing to go just so you can cling to power. I'm saying South Africans must wake up. They must open their eyes. They must see politicians for what they are, especially the ANC politicians. The shame and the lack of conscience in the ANC politicians have reached proportions of indescribability. And we cannot, on the basis of a mere 350, celebrate mediocre. These are graduates whose families have invested in them. There's so much that is awaited on them. There is so much of their dreams, Bafana, that on a daily basis is perishing. No one is able to come back and say, this is how I will recover the wasted time that I subjected you to.
My sister, You are right, because I look at this, I say, I understand the need that is met by these grants. However, I fear that with this welfare is being used in a way to keep certain people in power rather than actually. I mean, if you're gonna have a grant, rather have it maybe for like 7 years, and after a while, some people must get off the grant to show that there is growth, to show that there is progress. You can't have people just joining our own. On this grant every single now and then. That means you're not going anywhere as a nation. I'm gonna come to this issue. It's been some are even campaigning on it. Illegal immigration in our nation. Some are saying let's deport them back to their countries. Some are saying let's find a way to naturalize them. What is your solution?
Look, let's start with the latter. Imagine us having to naturalize every illegal immigrant in South Africa. Do you know what does that mean? It means those of people who are employed will each have an additional beneficiary that is waiting on their tax. That means the tax bracket of the people who are employed will escalate. Because where would we get the money to fund the additional population that we've added? We're going to have to get it from the overly stretched employees of all kinds, whether a person is employed in corporate or is employed in government, they are the funders. Those are the people who fund every single government program. So when we say we must naturalize illegal immigrants, are we cowards to that extent? And if we think that is a solution, who is going to bring a relief to the overly stretched middle class?
True.
Because you are now exploiting the middle class simply because you are trying to find short solutions to long-term challenges that you are not going to solve now. And a long-term solution to this crisis is one and one only. Listen, there is no reason why we must engage on continental bilateral engagements as South Africa when we're going to sit and smile in those tables and not speak about the matters that affect our country, to say, stop busing your people to South Africa and dump them there. It's not a dumping zone.
Yeah.
That's a country that is still on a rebuilding mode.
Yes.
We are not in the business of trying to be a big brother and a father Christmas to any African state.
True.
If that was the case, how long did it take South Africa to attain its democracy? When we were not under democracy, whose country were we a burden to?
None.
We were not a burden to any country. We were here in South Africa, fighting our battles, tussling with the erstwhile government to ensure that ultimately the will of the people emerges.
Yes.
Why must we teach our fellow Africans to leave when their countries are going down the drain and come and find New York in South Africa? When they find New York in South Africa, where must South Africans find New York? Because what happens is that we have a territorialism that is happening in our country. The total takeover that is being done by illegal immigrants in this country,
Yes.
where they will occupy a space and want to take over the space, and want to wash out South Africans. And that is exactly why we see these violent retaliations that they do when law enforcement agents need to go to those areas to ensure that there's law and order. Because they are well organized, that they have blocked that space. It belongs to them. They have taken over the ownership of that space. South Africans no longer even have access to certain spaces. Go to Sunnyside in Pretoria. Go to Hillbrook, go to Berea, go to all these places, go to Kempton Park.
Yes.
And then the next thing, we're going to be labeled as xenophobic simply because we are fighting for the sovereignty of our country. We must never be apologetic. If anything, we must allow them to call us xenophobic.
Yes.
To defend our country, we'll even go as far as becoming xenophobic. And if you say that as a reckless statement, Anele, to say, I will say to you, I have never heard of a South African that has gone to any country and wanted to take over that country.
True. It also comes to the issue of security, my sister. And you look at how also South Africans feel insecure in their nation. It just said now, when you go to certain areas, you feel unwelcomed. You feel like, okay, I shouldn't be here. Sunnyside, whether Melville, all these places. But also, crime can't just be something that you only blame on the illegal immigrants. Even our people also, they are part of this these crime syndicates. I'm going to go to the issue of security.
Yes.
We have so many police. We have so many soldiers. We have even now security guards are all over the city. But still people don't feel safe. Under your government, under your leadership, should we expect harsher sentences? Should we expect maybe more mapanyazas? Your view?
Firstly, I believe that there is a need for us to empower our South African police officers.
Yes.
I think we need to create, firstly, an objective policing that is not retaliative in nature.
Yes.
But we must combine that with a very aggressive, rapid attack that is a response mechanism.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, you cannot train police to be like chickens.
True.
They have to bite, and when they bite, there must be a sting that is left, right?
Yes.
So we can't want to have a progressive police service, but we do not also fully bring into infuse that with an element of these must be your areas of tactical heightened responses, right?
True, yes.
And unleashing those must be necessitated. But equally, we must remain committed to saying a police officer in South Africa cannot be treated like some nonsensical, nonentical person. A police officer is a respected man of the law.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I do know that South African police officers have somehow brought in the shame into the badge themselves by their conduct, accepting bribes here and there and whatnot and whatnot. Those are things that we cannot condone, right? But we cannot create an impression that it is correct to contest the authority of a police officer at work simply because you want to register or you want to assert your authority either as a citizen or you are standing in contestation of a violation of your human rights. There needs to be respect for police officers. We can't expect law and order to be maintained when we don't have respect to the people who are entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining law and order. I will definitely advocate for not just for mild, but very harsh and very direct sentences, especially on issues that relate to undermining authorities on duty and executing putting the law and order as we desire. Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, police will not negotiate everything with us. Will not be happy with everything that they require. But trust me, when there is law and order, a larger element of our society will be satisfied and will be happy and will be safe. But that will also come with some level of responsibility from ourselves, right? But we must equally balance this with a measure that says we need to create a new system and a strategy of rotational exposure. No police officer must spend more than a year in one police station or police service. That's how they get to be familiar and they get to integrate themselves in these criminal activities. They protect criminals. They do this, that, and the other because a person have become a neighbor, a chovicho, you know, it's a skim sam. A police officer used to be a man with no friends. They used to socialize with themselves only because it was maintaining their integrity and the dignity of the work that they must do. If they become friends with you, what happens when you are a trafficker and they must come and arrest you? They're going to text you on WhatsApp and inform you about Ejo, move because they are on you, you know. So we are going to have to introduce that, you know, social curtailing of police officers to say we must go back into that state of police officers. I mean, if you look at judges, you never see judges in parties, you never see them in malls, you never see them anywhere because the nature of their job requires them to always be away in being exposed to things that may compromise who they are and the work that they do. And those are the things that I'm firmly proposing in my manifesto to say police officers must be on a regular rotation, which must not must take place every single 12 12 months after a person has been exposed in that space. But over and above that, we need police officers that are going to, all of them, from constable to the general.
Yes.
They must be subjected to a regular quarterly a lifestyle audit, because you need to know who funds the lifestyle of your police officers. And when you do that, you are not trying to snoop and overreach, but you are trying to ascertain the level of commitment to the badge of serving the people of South Africa.
My sister, I'm gonna go into this part. You're an independent candidate.
That's right.
How do the people hold you accountable? How do we know that you won't take my vote and join a political party and be, what they call that thing, go into an alliance or some sort? How do we hold you accountable? Because usually with political parties, we march and the party inside decide. But if you are by yourself, are you the law unto yourself?
Absolutely not. And I always say that the introduction of the independent candidates, the people of South Africa must see it as the true expression of the people shall govern. Because up until the introduction of independent candidates, there were no people that were accessible to the people of South Africa on the ground.
Yes.
Because a political party is not has got no accessibility. It doesn't owe you, as they would say.
Yes.
They don't see themselves as owing you anything, because their allegiance is to their membership, right? As Anele, who stands as an independent candidate, I am voted for by the people from grassroots, right? What does that mean? My way of being accountable is to the very same people in the form of the quarterly national imbizos that I must go to, convene and give reports on performance, on my work in Parliament, but also give updates on whatever that is coming on the agenda of Parliament that I need to solicit the views of the people of South Africa, who must empower me to say, Anele, on this aspect, go and use this approach, or go and consider looking at this matter through this angle. Those are the people who are my leaders, where I report to and where I take much of line, right? The fact that I might have known that I possess the necessary skills and leadership attributes and prowess to stand and become an independent candidate, it doesn't make me see myself as aloof and above the people of South Africa at the end of the day. Because ultimately, the test of my leadership is going to be me being in Parliament and standing on the issues that are affecting people directly, and people feeling the gap having been closed of how far government has been from them. Because as we speak currently, the way in which people do not have an access to government is most disappointing. Yet we portray this as the government of the people. Yet the gap is so big. And the introduction of independent candidates literally come into that space where people have a direct way of speaking to Anele, who is in National Assembly as a representative of the people. Something that has never been experienced in South Africa. Something that political parties have failed for 30 years to offer the people of South Africa.
My sister, we are about to wrap it up. And I thank you so much for taking your time and for standing up for the people of South Africa. Your heart is in the right place, your vision for this country. But I'm going to give you one chance.
Yes.
This chance only. The camera is right there behind me. Why should South Africans trust you with their vote on the 29th of May? Go.
I am a South African, and I possess all the privileges that each South African citizen has in this country. One of those is standing up and being a responsible leader who must fix South Africa, who must reclaim South Africa, who must restore South Africa.
Yes.
The hopes and aspirations and the dreams of the people of South Africa has been shattered in the trajectory of 30 years. It is time that young, old men and women of our country rise and join hands together to rebuild this country of our dreams, a place that we call home, but a place that is a future to the future generations. We must account on our own selves, but we must also account to the fallen heroes and heroines who made it possible for us to live in the democracy that we today experience.
That's Anele Mda. You heard it here. Do you trust her? Would you be voting for her on the 29th of May? You make that choice. Share your comments on the comment section. And yes, share, subscribe, and like the content. Other than that, this was Manifesto Unpacked. I am Bafana Modise, proudly brought to you by Podcast Party.